It is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Like Josh just said, I am Tyler. That is Smitty. Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. Thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to go follow us on all of our social medias. It is at Around the 412 as well. And you know what? Shout out to Smitty's new podcast with Alan Saunders of Pittsburgh Steelers Now. Check that out. It's called Steelers Afternoon Drive. You can find that on YouTube. And is it on listening platforms as well?
It is now. Today was the first day that it's been available on Spotify and Apple and iHeart and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's going to be as far as I know, I mean, you could talk to a better daily show about the Steelers Monday through Friday.
Let me just, as long as you're okay with this, let me just give the people a brief preview here of what we're looking at.
For sure.
So that's our logo. Shout out to Dylan Winters for the logo. And then Joe Staggerwald, who does a ton of stuff with the site in general, kind of like the do-it-all guy. That's actually his band playing that song.
Really? That's
very
cool.
Renegade type song. If you've heard the full, if I play the full version for you, it's like almost 2 minutes long, the actual full version. So very cool. But yeah, Alan and I have been talking about doing something for, I think, like 2-ish years. So to finally be able to like actually make it come to fruition and it be about the Steelers specifically is great. So Monday through Friday, just it depends on like when the Steelers practice and stuff. Typically we did the podcast and show up between 5 and 6. So daily show talking about the Steelers. Like and subscribe over there at Steelers Now and Pittsburgh Steelers Now, and check out the site where him and Nick and all the other people have great coverage of the team.
But yeah, and like I said before that, go follow us at Around the 412 for all of our personal stuff. That's on YouTube as well. Go subscribe there, leave a 5-star review, all that good stuff. And then go check out the links that we're going to continue to push. We've been doing it for a while, but especially now we have our Rocket Around the 412 campaign. Where for the past 5 years, we've been able to help dozens of families and dozens of kids in support of Christmas, because Smitty and I, we never really had to worry about where our Christmas was coming from. So we started this mission several years ago as a way to give back to children in our local 412/724 area code. And as well, that we partnered with them last year. We're going to continue to do so this year. The Salvation Army in Rochester, PA. We're going to continue to partner with them to adopt children from their age tree. That way we can provide children Christmas from there as well as the additional individual families that we get from either people we know in the community or like we've tried to mention as well. And people, I don't know if people forget or they just don't really think they should. You can nominate people if in whether it is yourself or someone you know. If there's someone that you feel like there is someone of need this upcoming Christmas time. I know it seems like it's crazy. It's August. We're talking about Christmas, but it gets here quicker than you think. So if there's anybody that you can know of, feel free to shoot us a DM or a text or anything, and nominate a family to be helped out this Christmas, and we'll try to help them the best that we can.
There were a couple new donators. It's not just Mike on his own now. So shout out to Andrew, Pens 871 on Twitter. That's how I know him as, but right. he was a big contributor last year. I think last year was like the first year that he really kind of found us. As you can tell, Penguins fan, so that's probably more so what he's here for than anything. But he's a fan of all Pittsburgh teams, I believe. And then Carol, one of my favorite people from Twitter, who I've had the pleasure of meeting at several Steelers games, donated as well. So starting to grow a little bit. I think people are catching on to the fact that the mission is going. That's, I guess, I don't want to say there's any downside to starting it early, because it just means people can get their eyes and ears on it as early as possible. But I don't think it's like on a lot of people's minds yet. So, which is fine. We know that the donations are going to come and you guys are going to support us like you have in the past. So no problem there. But yeah, check it out. As Tyler mentioned with the East Rochester Salvation Army, I keep forgetting to mention this. Don't know that how many people that watch or listen to the show are really like in our area anyway, but they're going to be having a back to school event on August 19th. It's during the day. I know like people's first thought might be, I don't even know if people like think of this right away. The Steelers do have a preseason game that day. But that's at night. So if you are in the area and would want to come out, help out. I know that they're looking for some people to stuff the backpacks and stuff like that. I will be there during the day. So have that going on August 19th. I'll try to get just so you guys have an idea of the type of stuff that they do. I'll try to get some pictures if that's cool with them and let you guys know. I think Derek Moy's going to be there. Rochester dude, former Pittsburgh Steeler. People might recognize that name. But yeah, so should be a cool event kind of leading into the holiday season.
Dope.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
All right, let's talk about the Steelers, I guess, first and foremost, when it comes to the actual sports stuff that we're going to talk about this show, 5.5 minutes in. Camp, well underway at this point. We've actually got a couple padded practices to talk about now. And I was just talking with Alan about it. The veterans of the team really, and I get it because the rookie class is so exciting, and we'll get there and talk about them in a second. But Alan and I were talking today. It's kind of weird that no one's really talking about, Cam Hayward this year. No one's really talking about Patrick Peterson and camp, Isaac Samal. Those guys are just going about their business being, the really good players and veterans that they are. They're just not creating a ton of buzz. All the talk is about George Pickens and Joey Porter Jr., year 2 Kenny Pickett. Those are the headlines. I brought it up on here, so I was glad to be almost vindicated with Alan talking about it too. Patrick Peterson for the defense. And I think you talked about Patrick Peterson's side. I talked about the Allen Robinson side. It's almost like Steelers perfectly put this in place to have these young players and these vets kind of come in to be their mentors all at the same time. You have Allen Robinson for George Pickens. You have Patrick Peterson for Joey Porter Jr. I know that it's a guard and a tackle, but you have Isaac Samalo for Broderick Jones. They went about this just checking boxes and getting a veteran player to kind of pair with their young player.
Yeah. And that's a really smart move. And the one thing that is the caveat that we're not even mentioning when we talk about something like that is these aren't just veterans that you're bringing in to have a veteran presence and not really have a presence on the field too. These are guys that we're still expecting to have key roles in this season, and they're still being in that mentor role. I think that's a key part. Is not only are they going to be valuable in what they can bring in the veteran presence to the rookies and the second-year guys, but you also have guys that we're talking about that are going to be continuing to play at a high level. That's what we expect from Patrick Peterson. I mean, Allen Robinson, I don't know that we're expecting him to be wide receiver 1 or 2, but we're expecting him to play a lot of snaps and be a key role in the offense still. And then Isaac Samalo, he's going to be the starting left guard. So I think that you're the guys you're talking about, they're unique in the sense that they're not just on the team and they're one of the old guys and they're trying to mentor the young guys while they're sitting on the bench. They are also going to be playing, and I think that's a unique situation to what the Steelers have. And I think that's great. I can't really think of a lot of Steelers teams in recent memory where you've had a lot of veteran guys coaching up these young guys. It seems like the veteran guys or the guys that we're talking about are the only guys playing. We don't really have either a lot of young guys playing, or if we do have young guys playing, they don't really have a lot of mentorship above them, and they're just kind of thrown into it. So this is pretty a unique situation that the Steelers find themselves in, just because in recent memory, I can't really recall any situations where you've had that.
I think this is the best blend of a team that the Steelers have had in terms of the amount of youth with the amount of veterans that they have on the team. I mean, even you look at how young the offense is, and it's really Allen Robinson's the elder statesman. Everybody else is super young. And even those young players, though, they have a ton of experience. It's pretty crazy to think about. We're talking about Deontay Johnson going into year 4 or 5, 19, 20, 21, 20. Yeah, year 5 for him. I mean,
where'd the time go?
Yeah, and he's not a super old dude, but he's the obviously other than Allen Robinson, he's one of the elder statesmen on the offense.
In terms of playing and snaps that he's had on the field and experience, he is the veteran presence of that offense, especially in the wide receiver room.
Right. So I mean, and then I get on the defensive side, they obviously have a little bit more. Cam Hayward's on that side of the ball. TJ Watt's now been around for a long time, going into his 7th season.
Crazy. 2017 flown by.
Yeah. So a lot of youth, but also a lot of experience. So I think they really just have the perfect blend. And Alan was talking about this too. So there are definitely a lot of valid criticisms of Mike Tomlin. And, I think that we're well aware of them and we openly talk about them. But he right now is just firing on all cylinders. Like that's the way that Allen put it. Like he is really relishing in this in terms of the team that he has there, just taking it in stride. The fact that there are no, headaches right now at camp. Like these guys, like I want to talk about the battles that we've seen between Joey Porter Jr. and George Pickens, where it seems like they're about to fist fight and then the play's over and that's it. Like then they like hug and call each other their brother, like or they'll talk about it like, oh, that's my brother. Like he has created the perfect competitive culture there, while having those guys go out there and compete, play to the whistle, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Then they're teammates. I mean, I know that we're only a few days into padded practices here. A lot of things can change. Maybe those two will get into a fist fight at some point. I don't know, but just the way that things have started out here at training camp, I don't know what more you could ask for. I mean, you're looking for some hope going into the 2023 season. It's all there for you. Everything is there.
Well, from a team mentality, I don't think you could ask for anything else than what you've gotten so far. And we talked about it, was it last week when we were opening up camp, how weird it is from our perspective that we have no drama and that it's pretty refreshing to have that. Imagine being Tomlin and how he feels about that. Like you don't have any headaches as of right now in your locker room. You don't have any drama. You don't have anybody holding out. I'm sure from a head coach perspective, that is, especially from Tomlin, like what he's had to deal with over a lot of his career and certain players, he's got to love it. It's like a breath of fresh air for him in this scenario going into this year. And yeah, I think the mentality of this team is really unique to this year for the Steelers, because I don't really remember a season. We're talking about preseason and training camp, but I don't really remember a season where there was this much competitiveness, but so much what feels like respect and love amongst the teammates as well. Like it feels like from top to bottom, this team just feels like one we haven't really seen before. And maybe that has to do with like there is the no drama, there's no individual players like the causing any of that. But I do think that a lot of it is the players that we've brought in, like the guys we mentioned. I'm sure that Allen Robinson, I saw on Twitter today that George Pickens was pretty mad about an offensive pass interference call or something like that during team practice. And Allen Robinson was the first one to like come over and like talk to him and console him about that and try to get his head out of it. And then like what we've been mentioning with Patrick Peterson coaching up Joey Porter Jr. and that, like those are hand in hand for the culture of the team. And so the guys that the Steelers have brought in, they've built a culture from the guys that they brought in. That's what's built the culture, not just the Steelers way itself and not just the coaching staff, but you build a lot of what your team's culture is and how you're going to reflect yourselves about the players you're bringing into your locker room. And I think from what we've seen so far is they've gotten a lot of really good players on the field and also off the field when it comes to what they bring to a locker room and what they bring to coaching up these young players.
George Pickens was talking about Robinson, and he was like, if I'm going to go take a snap in the slot, I talked to Allen before I talked to Coach Jackson, who's the wide receivers coach, about what I want to do and see what he thinks about it. Like he's another coach basically for those guys right now out there, which is awesome. And then you see like, the clips of Peterson working with Joey Porter Jr. after practice on some stuff. Even let's take it further than guys on the team right now, because we know how, Steelers culture is and just what it means to be a Steeler for life. Ike Taylor being at practice and just starting to work with Joey Porter Jr. after practice. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's what this team's about, and it's why it's special to be a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, and people shouldn't take it for granted. That's another thing Allen was talking about. It's just like I don't think people realize whether it's for you or not. And I know that we've had discussions about how we feel about like actually going to training camp. It's such a unique thing to Steelers and Steelers fans to have that type of access to people, the players, their favorite players, and be able to have them just that accessible to sign autographs and take pictures, and they do it. Like Deontay Johnson spent like an hour after practice signing pictures. Like, yeah, it's unique.
And I think that the players probably realize what it means to the fan base too. Like they're not dumb. They know how much the Steelers mean to them, and I feel like day one, once you get into this organization, and you realize that it is different. And we've talked to players and not even really just about the Steelers, but we've talked about to players that have been on this podcast about all three Pittsburgh sports teams. Like there's just a sense in the air that is different when you are on a Pittsburgh sports team because of how passionate the city is about those teams, but especially the Steelers. So when we're talking about Steelers and training camp, like these guys know what it means. And so that also plays into the culture. The fan base plays into the culture. And it's awesome that the players have that much respect for that fan base to be able to do that. Like Deontay being out there, and not even just the players. I mean, you saw Omar Khan out there signing autographs too. And like we mentioned the other day with yesterday when we were actually on the Yins Daily podcast, you had mentioned on there, so go check out that out. But like Matt Canada signing a toilet seat, like just like playing into that like joke, like he knows that's a joke, but like he's actually willing to do it anyway.
Look.
If you're on the audio platform, you can't see it, but you can go check it out on YouTube at the 16-minute mark.
Oh wait,
it's throw me off. It's just so great to see how much from an organizational level they just completely buy into the Steelers culture from not just play on the field, not play in the locker room, but like from what the fan base level is and what this team means to the fan base. And you see this at training camp. That's a perfect example. And like you said, you and I have our opinions on like training camp itself and going to it, but you can't take away what it means to a lot of people. It might not mean the same thing to us, but you can definitely see it means a lot for people to go out there and see their favorite players and see them that up close and see the development of those guys. I mean, it's just something that not a lot of other fan bases get to experience. I feel like that, like, because you're like right up on them at Latrobe. So like, I just feel like you are in a completely, what's the right word? I would say it's more of a romantic atmosphere. I don't know if that's the right way.
It's like minor league baseball. That's how I always say about minor league baseball.
I kind of like to talk about it like for Pittsburgh concerts. It's like being at Stage AE versus being at Heinz Field. It's a completely different feel. And it has a more, that's a word I could come to, like a more romantic feel to it. A more intimate feel to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think it would I would feel differently about it. If I was somebody that, like if you're somebody that can't go to Steelers games, whether that's like a convenience
here we go.
thing.
We get the whole season holder over here.
Wasn't even gonna bring it up. But I'm just saying, if
you're like, but now that you have
that aren't able to go to games for whatever reason it might be, whether it be like location, time of year, money, whatever it might be, if they're able to get to training camp, that kind of fills that void. And I also think like for kids, it would be super awesome. So maybe if I would have went when I was younger and like experienced it, then it kind of would have been ingrained in me. Yeah. But like, that's who it's really for. I mean, you're creating fans.
We said that when we went, like, it would be different if we grew up going to this, because it is special for kids to be able to experience that.
Yeah. Cause they look at, these athletes completely differently at that stage in their life. Like they're like heroes to them. So, not all good, by the way, in Steelers land. Unfortunately, Corey Trice Jr., 7th round rookie, out for the season before his season even starts.
We should have known after talking about him so much and praising him so much on last week's episode.
I mean, he was the clip. He was the teaser. Yeah, he was the teaser for the show.
He was the teaser of you talking about him. He was on the thumbnail. We should have known. I mean, we have this curse for a long time that if we were going to spend this much time talking about a player, hyping him up, that this is going to happen. Yeah, that's a shame. This is a guy that if you listen to last week's episode, we talked about him possibly playing into the defensive role and having a major impact right away, getting able to play significant snaps, not just on special teams, but on defense. I mean, because we were talking about when you look at you got your top 3 corners in Patrick Peterson, Joey Porter Jr., and Levi Wallace. But after that, I would say Corey Trice probably could have separated himself as the next man up on the outside. So it's a shame that you're not going to be able to get to see that, especially for a guy. And like I said, I think you said this whenever you were talking on the episode or the show we were on yesterday. Like once a guy is on the field, you kind of like throw out where he was drafted and all that sort of stuff. But like with Corey Trice, it's hard for me to do that just because I know where he should have been drafted. And for the fact that you're able to get a player like that late, and then for this to happen, I mean, it doesn't like kill this this draft class whatsoever because of how good it is, but it does leave a little bruise on it now, and it's a little like heartbreak.
It's almost like last year with Calvin Austin. I mean, because Corey Trice might have been a 7th-round pick, but they could have taken him in the 4th, no question, which is where Calvin Austin got picked. And like we were expecting Calvin Austin to be a contributor in some capacity. I was expecting Corey Trice to be a contributor in some capacity. He was still, as of right now, behind even James Pierre in terms of where he was at. But like, you know, he could have leapfrogged for sure. The opportunity was going to be there. He had a strong start to camp, so it's just super unfortunate. And now, I mean, he's already like, I don't know that they officially said it was a torn ACL because I think Mike Tomlin just said it was a significant knee injury.
And it was non-contact, so you can probably guess what that is.
He's torn his ACL before, and he also broke his ankle going back to high school. So there's some injury history there. You just kind of start to worry, like, okay, now he's going to be going into next year, a 7th-round pick, second-year player that didn't play at all his rookie year, who has some injury trouble. It's just a shame. I mean, I don't know what the future holds for him. I'm hoping the best for him. I do think he's in an organization that, you know, kind of tying back to all the good things we just said about them, are going to support him throughout this whole thing and give him an opportunity to rehabilitate and still, you know, be a contributor next season. But man, to lose your entire rookie year, I mean, that's the worst case scenario, and it was confirmed. I was hoping it was more of just like a scare that looked a lot worse than what it actually was. We've seen guys get carted off like Ramon Foster in past years and then end up, you know, being fine. It was just a scare. So really unfortunate stuff for him. And also our boy, Alfonso Graham, suffered an injury and then was subsequently waived to open up the roster spot. I would be surprised if he found his way back to Pittsburgh, unfortunately. You know, next season, I think that's a little bit of a different case than Corey Trice. I don't know what the process is there. I don't know that other teams, you know, are really going to be interested in him. It's just when you're talking about a guy like that, where you're competing for a 3rd running back job, and now you're going to lose pretty much a year. I don't know if he was going to miss the entire season or what exactly was going on there, or if it was just like because he said in the tweet about missing the whole season, but I don't know if that was a thing where like he had already known that the Steelers were going to release, or what the deal was there. So I don't know that that's officially the case, or if he can latch on somewhere else. Rooting for him, obviously. I don't think he's going to circle back to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and it's just one of those scenarios where you're fighting for RB3, and you're clearly fighting for RB3. And I think we both thought that he had a shot to be able to make the team. Even if it could have been a long shot, he still had a shot. But it just sucks whenever you are in his situation where, yeah, the position you're fighting for, it's definitely going to be filled now, but I just don't. If there's a way back to Pittsburgh, it is a complicated way. Like, I don't think there's an easy way that he could come back even next offseason and try to compete for it again. It's just unfortunate.
Had he stayed healthy, he would have had a hard time competing with what Anthony McFarland's done so far. And
that's the thing. There was no guarantee that he would have even made the team if he had stayed 100% healthy. So it's just a tough scenario that he's in. It's different than Corey Trice, especially like, and I said I don't want to bring in like where they were drafted and stuff, but like Alfonso Graham wasn't even drafted; he was undrafted. So there's not as much stock to put into him from the Steelers' perspective. And then even with Corey Trice though, it's tough because like when I talk about a player and what they could bring onto the field, you don't want to necessarily bring in the pedigree of like where they were drafted and stuff like that, but it's going to be tough. Like you look at, he's a 7th-round guy, even though he should have been like a 4th-round or higher guy. Like that's if they eventually cut ties with him, I won't necessarily be that surprised if the Steelers get to that point, just because it is a 7th-round pick at the end of the day.
I guess the good news for him is Levi Wallace, Patrick Peterson, potentially. Patrick Peterson could have the 2nd year. Levi Wallace for sure, James Pierre, Shannon Sullivan, a lot of their corners are going to be gone after this year. So, you know, he still could play a role. We'll see. Rooting for him, obviously, hoping for the best in his recovery. That does it for Steelers talk. Unless you got anything else, we'll take a quick break and come right back and talk about the Penguins. Just really one thing, I guess, to talk about, a subtopic off of that first thing, but we'll be right back to talk about that. Don't go anywhere. As we get into the dog days of the NHL offseason, we're coming down to the wire here with arbitration for Drew O'Connor, but the team and Drew O'Connor agreed to a 2-year deal, $925,000 per. Was very happy to see it under $1 million, and was very happy to see a second year attached to it as well, getting him for 2 years as opposed to just one, so we don't have to go through this like entire process again next year. With a guy who I think is a very serviceable NHL player. I think he can certainly fit into the bottom six. I guess the question is he anything more than that? I don't know that he's going to get a shot to figure that out this year, but certainly to me looks like an NHL player.
Yeah, and we don't necessarily need him to be more than that. Right now, that's what we're looking for, to be completely honest. We're looking for serviceable bottom six guys that can play night in and night out at a higher level than what we saw last season. The number itself, the $925,000, I was honestly surprised that they agreed on that, just because I figured if it went to arbitration, Drew O'Connor would have been getting, like, I think I said like between 1 and 1.5 million, even though I don't think that he necessarily should have gotten that. That's just how I feel like the arbiter would have decided it. So I was pleasantly surprised to see that it was sub 1 million and to see that it was for 2 years. This is the guy that I want to be full-time in the bottom six now. Like, I don't really care who has to sit outside of it. I want Drew O'Connor to get a full crack at a bottom six. So whether that's on the third line or fourth line, probably start out on the fourth line, I would anticipate. And then we'll see where we go from there as the season goes along. But it's a guy that I am more excited about than most of the other players that we saw for the majority of last season. I am anticipating to see him in a more elevated role. And by elevated, I mean just be more full-time role at the NHL level, which we really haven't gotten. We got more of it last year, but not still on that full-time basis where, like, we knew entering the season that he was going to be on that fourth line. So I would anticipate that going into the season, he will be penciled in on that fourth line on one of the wings, probably the left wing of the fourth line. But you never know. I mean, things definitely could change, but I just feel like once this deal got done, now I feel like Drew O'Connor's not going to be traded. We had talked about that could he be packaged in a trade? I would say that is a no as of right now, and he's going to be definitely in a full-time role, at least to start the season. I mean, who knows? He might not play up to what we think his potential could be, but I'm anxious to find out of what Drew O'Connor could be in a full-time role.
I think what's interesting is you start like piecing together the bottom six, and maybe, like I said, the subtopic plays into it, because now agreeing to this, in 3 days on Saturday, a 48-hour buyout window opens up for the Penguins again. Is that a way to, I mean, we've talked about it before, obviously Kyle Dubas' last resort was going to be a buyout, but I feel like we're kind of at that point. Like, okay, I get that you held on to Granlund this long in hopes that like a trade would form where you could shed that salary. Clearly that's not taking place. I think you got to utilize this buyout window.
I think so too. You clear the near $4.8 million of cap, or near $4 million of cap that you would have for this season. I think that, look at what the cap projection of like their cap space right now, they're like -$3 million as of right now. You would be in out of the red in terms of that, and it would allow you to play some of the guys and not have to figure out how are we going to shuffle these lines around. It gets rid of a body in that bottom six, because like we mentioned a few weeks ago, like, they've brought in a lot of bottom six bodies, and it's curious how are they going to play them all. There was the hope, and everybody hoped, and I still hoped, and I don't even want to bring up the name because we talked about him a ton the past several weeks, that somehow Mikael Granlund would be shipped off in an Erik Karlsson trade. Well, as of right now, that trade has not happened, and I don't think that you can let this buyout window pass still hoping that trade could happen. And if that trade does happen, I would say Jeff Petry's gone, not even Mikael Granlund. So I don't think that they can let this window pass. I have no idea how you can go into the season, despite Dubas's past affection for affection. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, I was like,
his past affection for Mikael Granlund, because it was like rumored that he wanted to trade for him a couple years ago in Toronto. I don't think that you can allow yourself to let him be iced One, at the term or the money that he has and the cap that he's taking up. Two, you look at what he did in his stint in Pittsburgh last year, absolutely nothing. And then three, you brought in so many guys. It's like you're basically taking away one of the spots that from a new guy that you could be playing. So I just don't think there's any way possible that they could do this. I understand the buyout would suck, especially when you're owing him after this year. It'd be like $1.8 million for the next like 4 years in a row. But I genuinely think that you have a better option of buying him out and making your team better in that sense than and just deal with your cap restrictions with the seasons to come. I don't know if I'm the GM, I don't know how I justify keeping him past that buyout window.
I mean, let's talk about some of the bottom 6 guys they've brought in. Like, for sure that we know we're going to play Eller and Achari for sure. Nieto, I would assume.
Yeah.
We've talked about DOC getting a 2-year deal. Nylander's still here. Jeff Carter's here. Right now, Granlund's here. Then they brought in some guys that are like, fringe, like that could play in the bottom 6. Vinny Hinostraza, Andreas Janssen, Radim Zahorna. Like they just signed a bunch of guys that could potentially play in the bottom 6. Like something's got to give here. And if you're talking about taking their best 6, I don't know if we're going to agree on this. Well, I say best 6, but like I really don't see a way that Carter's not involved in that.
That's the thing.
So, like,
best 6 with the asterisk of Carter has to be played because he's not going anywhere.
Yeah. So, but Carter on the wing, right. Eller and Achari would be the centers. Carter would be on one of the wings. Nylander, DOC, Nieto.
I agree.
Yeah.
That's their best bottom 6 right now. I think.
And I'll be honest. If it's not, I'm going to probably get flamed for this. I get that he's very old, should not have been playing the way that he was. Carter could still probably score you 15 to 18 goals playing on the wing. Like, yeah. I don't hate it as much.
If you take away his defensive responsibility of being a center, it's more tolerable of him being out there if he's on the wing.
Yeah. So what I was just saying is I probably, as crazy as it sounds, do include him right now in their best 6.
Yeah, because I would agree.
Janssen or Hinostraza, those would be the only 2 that maybe push for that, depending on how they look.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like we don't know how a lot of these guys are going to look, but I agree. Those 6 names are in your best, and if that's the thing, if Granlund's still here, he's not in those 6 names. I would put like Andreas Janssen above him. In who are your best bottom 6 forwards. So yeah, we talked about this was a topic, but we're talking about it more than DOC. Like there's just no way that you can keep this dude on your roster. He does nothing. I don't know another way to say it. He literally does nothing out there. He doesn't really generate anything. He's bad defensively. He's just kind of skating when he's out there. He doesn't generate any offense. So, yeah, they need to buy him out. That's the sum up of this conversation is just they just need to buy him out so they can play their best bottom 6 that they can put together.
Yeah, I'm very curious as to if that's the route that they go at this point. Again, Kyle Dubas.
Dubas was very vocal against it.
Yeah,
but I think that when push comes to shove, even though you don't love it, you got to do what's best for your team.
I'm proud of her. Maybe you quickly mentioned the name Erik Karlsson, but we really didn't talk about that.
Yeah, we didn't. We were maturing on this podcast before your very eyes. We can talk about the Penguins without talking about Erik Karlsson. But
I want it to be over, man. Like,
boy almighty, wait till he is.
And
a
if
Penguin.
Then
we're going to talk about it a ton.
It's like if he's not gonna go somewhere, whatever. If he's gonna go somewhere else, whatever. If he's not going to be a Penguin, I think they have to do something else before the season starts. So that's why I want it to be over with.
Yeah. No, I agree. But and that's the tough part is like we talked about plan Bs. There's not really any good ones. There's just more swallowable ones than others.
Yeah. Unless you're talking like, but the Noah Hannafin thing really doesn't make sense to me. He plays on the other side, like he plays on the left side then, and also just 1 year left at 4.5 milli before. Did I just say milli? Mil before you're gonna have to
4.5 a
re-up
milli
him, and that's gonna be a lot of money that I don't foresee them shelling out. Like it's a 1 year rental basically. I don't know that makes sense.
I don't think so either. And then like the other name that was brought up, Matt Dumba. I don't really. The way I described it was. I mean, that's basically how I described it. Was I do not think that the defensive lack of play from Dumba is not offset by his offense like it is with Carlson. That's how it's more tolerable with Carlson. Is you're okay if he doesn't really play that good of defense because one, you'd expect him to be played with Marcus Pettersson and he would make up for some of that slack. And two, I mean, he could score like 100 points in a season. So it's a little different than Dumba, who's you would be expecting to score maybe like 50 points in a season. And that would be a really good season from Dumba. I feel like it's not the same when you're comparing like and contrasting what you're giving and what you're taking.
Yeah. Just figure it out. I want this saga to end. This segment's gonna end. We're gonna stop talking about the Pittsburgh Penguins and talk about the MLB trade deadline just passed, and the Pirates, as they do every year, traded away some players. So we'll talk about that when we come back. Don't go anywhere. The Pittsburgh Pirates made some moves since the last episode. 5 players that were on the team no longer are. One of those happened, I believe, the day after we recorded. Wasn't on trade deadline day, but Carlos Santana traded
the one
to
that
the
we
Brewers.
said we didn't think was going to leave.
Yeah, so we thought it was between Santana or Choi. They traded both. So typical Pirates fashion.
They really just said screw first base. We're not really worried about it.
Yeah, Pittsburgh Clothing Company tweeted the clip from Moneyball where Brad Pitt playing Billy Bean is like, right now, if there's a grounder hit to first base, nobody's going to be there to stop it. So you got Connor Joe playing there right now. Alfonso Rivas, who was part of the Padres trade, probably will play first base. It's going to be a platoon situation. That's not going to be a very good one. But okay, so looking at these deals, Carlos Santana to the Brewers for an 18-year-old shortstop, Johnny Severino. Rich Hill and G-Man Choi both go to the Padres in a deal for 3 players. Jackson Wolf, a left-handed pitcher who is 24 years old. He made his major league debut, but he was actually sent to Altoona here, not even Indy. Alfonso Rivas, who's going to come up and play some games in the majors, it sounds like. He looks like he's a quad A player. He's like a 300 hitter in AAA, and then he gets to the majors and can't hit, which is great. And
he'll fit right in.
Yeah, Estuar Suero, who is the, I guess, prize of the deal, if you will. Actually, Fangraphs really likes this deal for the Pirates because they have Suero and Wolf as the number 10 and 11 prospects in the Padres system. So to get those 2 guys for, a couple months of Rich Hill and G-Man Choi, they thought the Pirates did pretty well. But Suero is not even 18 years old yet. They traded Rodolfo Castro, which was kind of the one we wouldn't have really seen coming, for a left-handed pitcher, Bailey Falter, who has absolutely god-awful numbers this year.
Oh, I looked at them.
Did you
They're
see?
terrible.
Okay, I was going to bring let me see if I could find them real quick right here. Yeah, so we talk about pitching records all the time, like that's whatever, but he is 0-7, which is pretty crazy, with a 5.13 ERA in 8 games, 7 starts with Philly this season, 8 walks to 28 strikeouts in 40 innings.
Well, and that means that like in his 7 starts, he lost all of them. He didn't even get a no decision. Like he lost all of his games that he pitched in. Yeah. So, I mean, in a way, maybe he'll fit right in too. But I just think that we traded for a lot of players that we were going to fit the Pittsburgh Pirate mold. That's what we were really getting down to.
I'll be honest. The Castro one's the one that made the least sense to me for Bailey Falter. Because Castro's still young. I know he's been very disappointing this season and very frustrating. but like at the very least, he looks like a guy that can, platoon and play against lefties. I'm not sure what you're getting from Bailey Falter. So I thought that one made the least amount of sense. It was the most head scratching. It's not like something to be like up in arms about, I don't think, but it's a weird trade for the Pirates to make, I thought. Austin Hedges going for international pool money to the Rangers. The Rangers, that's a good, the Rangers are 16 games over 500, or actually they were entering today. I don't know if they won or lost, if they played, and they traded for Austin Hedges. That just goes to show you, that is what he brings to the table is certainly valuable, just not to the Pirates. He's not a guy that should play every single day. He's not a guy that it just doesn't matter to the Rangers that he provides no offense. They're getting him for what he brings in terms of pitch framing.
That's a good point. That on a certain team, he is valuable. And when you have a team that can make up for the lack of offense you're getting, it's more palpable to be able to take a guy like that on. And I mean, it would say it's kind of like whenever we would, and granted, I think he provided more offense, but he still wasn't that great. But like whenever Garrett Cole would pitch and we'd start Chris Stewart, like we knew that we were going to get the lack of offensive production that we weren't going to get whenever like Cervelli was starting. But from what you got out of Cole, because Cole was different whenever Chris Stewart was catcher. And then two, like what you got defensively from him, it was okay. So, and that was when the Pirates were good. So I think it was when you're in a better lineup, it's easier to bury that guy in the lineup, and it's not as hard to hide it.
You made a Chris Stewart reference the same day the Pirates broadcast did. He legit just got brought up today because somebody had like a hit that like just a ball, like a baseball that had eyes and stuck into the outfield. And Bob Walk said it reminded him of, he was like, who's the guy that would always for us get a base hit and then point to his helmet? And Greg Brown, it was Chris Stewart. So in the same day that they made a Chris Stewart reference, we did on here too. I just thought it was funny. But yeah, I mean, there's certainly teams that he provides value for. Texas is one of them. I mean, good for these guys. You look around, Santana to the Brewers, Hill and Choi to the Padres, Hedges to the Rangers, and Castro to the Phillies. Like they all went, of course, like teams are buyers at the deadline, but they all went to have a shot. Like these are good teams they went to. So good for them. I hope it works out.
Yeah, me too. Also, I'm just curious. So this one kid, the Estuar Suero kid, is he not in the, at least according to MLB Pipeline, is he not in the Pirates prospects because he's 17 years old?
I don't know.
I don't know if that's I don't know if that's a thing, because if he's the winner, like Jackson Wolf was put as the 17th ranked prospect for the Pirates system. So I was like, I wasn't sure if maybe it's just like an age thing, like he's not in.
I wouldn't think so.
Yet.
Maybe they just don't like him as much as Fangraphs or something. Because, like I said, Fangraphs
that could be the case.
Fangraphs had them as 10 and 11 in the Padres system. I'm not sure where they'll slot in for the Pirates on Fangraphs, but
Paul Skeens isn't in our prospect system yet either, according to MLB.com. So,
okay.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's just because he hasn't been assigned yet to a team. Paul Skeens probably isn't going to be on this list. He's just going to be immediately deemed not a prospect.
Yeah. Henry Davis just recently graduated prospect status. We don't know what any of these players really are going to be for the most part. To get a couple of, I feel like, high-end lottery tickets and Johnny Severino and Suero, like I thought the Pirates actually did okay on the surface with what they got.
Yeah.
It sucks that every single year we're talking about this though. Like, when is it going to be time for them to be on the other end of this?
Hopefully 2024. It's one of those things where it's like you give credit where credit's due, where they did what seems like a decent job in what you got, especially on like guys that were on a lot of 1-year contracts. Like you want to get value from those guys, and that's what they got. But at the same time, you're right. Like we don't want to have to be in this cycle forever. We eventually want to be the buyers, or I'll even settle for just staying pat. Like we feel good about where we're at when we're just not going to sell anything, but we're not going to buy either. I'd take that in next season. What's got to change?
This is going to be Probably, I never mind, because I said this last year, so I can't say it 2 years in a row because it's just going to be like, you should just say it every year. I was going to say, I feel like this is the most important offseason the Pirates have had, like basically in our lifetimes, because of the way that they're talking about how 2024 is going to be. They have to go out and show that, like with what they have right now on the roster, they need to have a big offseason. They need to be willing to spend to fill in the pieces of what's on the roster. Obviously, if you're really like, I feel really good about Brian Reynolds bouncing back next year. I really think that this is just a lot due to health. He's just been a weird season. T. Bryan, I think you got to manage him better going forward. But you got Henry, you got Endy. I think that you got some pieces here.
You have Cruz coming back next season.
You do have Cruz. You hopefully you have Cruz coming back for a little bit this year, just to give us something to watch in September. But yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Well, that's the thing. All these young guys are here because what we talked about, the difference between this offseason and last offseason, they weren't here yet. But all the young guys that we had talked about coming up this season, they're here. So you have to build on top of that. And that's the difference that they're going to have this offseason. And that's how it could be still very important, but slightly different than what they dealt with this past offseason, where it was like the team they built to start the season was more or less buying time for all these guys to get to this point. Now they're here. Like and they've stayed up here, and despite their struggles, I feel like they're going to stay up here. And they're going to figure it out. And I think that there's a lot of change that needs to happen at the MLB level. Like we've mentioned several times on this show, why is Andy Haynes still employed by the Pirates? What's he doing to help this team whatsoever? But yeah, there's going to be change. There's got to be change, I feel like. But at the end of the day, it's different because those guys are up here. They're going to stay here, like the Henry Davis, Endy Rodriguez, Nick Gonzalez, Leo Porguero, like all those guys. I feel like starting next season, they're just going to start at the MLB level. There's no let's go back down to AAA. So we're building on top of that, and I feel like that's the main thing is like we have our young core now, and we have our guys that we have under contract or bigger contracts that are our core in that sense. Now you just need to build on top of them. And the Pirates have done a poor job of building on top of key pieces that they've had. Not that they've had a lot of pieces, but before in the first place. But I feel like in most off seasons they've done a poor job of building on top of it to get them over a hump. That's going to be the difference that we have to see this upcoming off season is can they get over this hump with this young core?
I'm looking at like upcoming free agents. Not a very strong class, really. I mean, obviously you got Ohtani, but like. I'm going down the list here. Not a great class. I hope a guy like Eduardo Rodriguez, who we just saw today pitch for Detroit, opts out. I think he would be interesting. And I'm just really looking at pitching right now. Aaron Nola, I think he's going in the wrong direction.
I mean, looking at pitching would make sense because of the way this season has gone.
Blake Snell is a free agent. He's going to be 31, though.
I mean, we signed a 41-year-old this past offseason.
Yeah, and that's I say that, but it's like you have to basically be in the majors for 6 years before you can hit free agency anyway. So, like, how much younger? Most of these guys are in their 30s.
Yeah.
Super young to be hitting free agency. Julio Urias from the Dodgers is hitting free agency this year.
Was he like 26, 27?
Yeah. 26.
Man, it must be nice to see prospects come up that young.
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, we'll see Paul Skeens pretty soon.
He's about to be 27, but still, yeah. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. It might have to be something they look at trade-wise, though, more so than free agency.
They could. I'm interested to see because, like, the Pirates have the I don't know according to what site, but Pirates have the #1 farm system in baseball right now.
I think that was Fangraphs, but they were still, I don't know if that was fully updated though, because they only had 81 players listed in their top 100 at the time. I don't think they were done putting everybody's, but I didn't see anything since then to like show that they weren't. So yeah, they at one point at least were, and you got, a couple guys that should help that ranking, I would think. From the Padres.
especially at least with Fangraphs, the way they're talking about.
And that was on Fangraphs, I believe, that you were talking about. So they probably do have the number one. Although Davis has graduated since. So
all we have to do is trust the Bucking process. That's what it boils down to. Trust the Bucking process.
I'm trying to. We'll see what 2024 brings. I mean, obviously it's not happening in 2023, so we'll see what happens. The 2024 offseason is going to be very telling into where they feel like this team's at. But with the way that 2023 has gone, I don't know how you could be super hopeful that magically all of a sudden you're going to be contending the next year. Unless they really are putting that in. And I get it. Like O'Neal Cruz, you lost him for basically the season. That was going to be a huge contributor for you.
You had spasms with Cabrian and Reynolds. Like there was different times of them being out of the lineup. There's excuses. That's what they have. They have excuses to sell to people. But
in the same breath, I would say you need to be more prepared for that than they were.
Yeah.
To be able to make up for those guys going down. Obviously, you're not going to replace a guy like O'Neal Cruz or Brian Reynolds or T. Brian Hayes, but you got to have something there in terms of.
And that's why I said they're excuses. I wouldn't necessarily say they're reasons. Cruz being out for as long as he was, that could be a reason, partially. But like, there's a lot of excuses.
But for the way that they could also decide to employ more than one major league shortstop for 6 months or whatever it was.
No.
All right. Well, that's all I got. So.
Yep. We can get out of here in sub 1 hour. So.
Yeah, there we go. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, leave us a comment down below. Let us know how you feel about anything that we talked about in this episode, anything that you would like to see in the future. Leave us some questions. We'll talk about it on the next episode, all that good stuff. Leave us a 5-star review if you were listening somewhere that's not YouTube. And of course, check out those links in the description of the show. We got Rock Around the 412 going on, our yearly Christmas mission. We've raised $25,000 in the first 5 years of doing so. Super excited from this point on to be partnering with the East Rochester Salvation Army and adopting kids from their angel tree in the name of our friend Dalton Keene, who tragically passed away last October. So really good stuff going on here. We launched that in July. We've gotten a few donations so far. We're a little over $1,200 raised to this point, which is great. Keep it coming. And yeah, we're really excited about it. At some point down the line, you guys will start to see me get the prizes in. I'll put screenshots up of what those prizes are for people that donate. Always enjoy doing that as well. It's just a way to give back to you guys for being so generous and giving Christmas to these kids. So stay on the lookout for that. Check out Everything Custom Designs by our friend Haley Wagner, actually cooking up a couple of t-shirt designs for me right now. She's making a Henry Davis shirt. If you guys see the shirts that I'm real into right now are like those modern vintage ones where it's like 4 or 5 different pictures of the player and it says their name. So she's making me a Henry Davis one and an Alex Highsmith one. So super excited to see how those turn out. So yeah, check that out. Other than that, for Tyler, I'm Smitty. This has been Around the 412. We'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.